Hey everyone, in my last video I showed you how to make this slingshot out of a natural fork. It turned out pretty good, but I wanted to try something more difficult, lamination. Therefore I made this slingshot. This one also started out as a natural fork. I cut it in pieces, glued some oak in between and reinforced it with a thick steel rod. I met a bunch of problems while making this because the lamination were weakening the structure. It turned out to look really good though in the end, so I was happy with the results. I didn't make a video about it because it was just gonna be a quick project. It turned out to be quite the opposite. But because I didn't make a video showing you how to make this, I'm gonna show you something else instead. Namely, how to make these custom pattern knife scales using nothing but hand tools. Here we go! So the first thing you're gonna need is a birch log. Use a ruler and a pen to mark out lines on top of the log. This will serve as a guide later. Use a normal hand saw to cut off the sides. Keep in mind that it does take quite some effort because you're cutting along the grain, not against it. You can simply compare it to resawn lumber on a bandsaw. The cut gets clogged up with sawdust and it takes a lot of time. Once you have one end flat, you need to mark out a 50mm thick sheet and cut it out using the same saw. Clamp the piece in a vise, cut it in half and cut the sides off. Then use a hand plane to smooth it out. You should now have 2 small strips of birch, but we need to make 2 more, this time using oak. Now take one of the pieces and trace the outline on some 15mm thick oak board. Cut it out using the same saw we used before, and then flatten out the edges using the hand plane. If your pieces have unmatching thickness, you can fix that by planing it down. Now it's time for the template. To make the pattern I have drawn here, I will need to cut each wood strip into small triangles. Then they will be glued together. Next we are gonna need a miter box. It is simply 3 pieces glued together at a 90-degree angle, which has slots for a handsaw to fit in. However, the miter box does only have a slot for a 90 and a 45-degree cut. We will need something like 25 degrees, so we will have to make our own slot. I cut the slot at a 25-degree angle and try my best to get it as square as possible. My first cut didn't go so well, because I hadn't clamped down the piece hard enough for it to stay in place. But when I clamped it better, it worked like a charm. As you can see, we got a very clean edge. So at this point I started cutting out more of these triangles, because I now had seen that it would work. I found the oak a lot harder to cut than the birch, but that's probably because it is a harder wood. It will work fine however if you don't put too much pressure on the saw. All the triangles are now cut out, but they need some heavy sanding. As you can see, it already looks a lot better. I thought it looked good enough for gluing, so I used a piece of oak as a back panel to let the glued pieces rest against to make a flat edge on one side. Also, I'm not using epoxy or anything fancy, I'm just using normal wood glue because it is cheap. 12 hours of drying time and this looks pretty good. The edges that were flat yesterday seems to have bent during the night, so I will have to flatten them out again. One of the sides are concave, so you can't use the hand plane to flatten out. You will first have to use some rasps and files to grind off the edges. So as you can see, the sides are almost perfectly flat, but we will still need to sand it with some rough grit sandpaper. This is because the flatter you can get this edge, the better the lamination will look. You don't want to Just like the sides, the front panel needs to be planed down and sanded until it's smooth. Now it's time to pick a pattern. I had a few in mind, but I decided to go the last one because I liked that one the most. To glue these together, I'm once again using normal wood glue. I make sure to clamp them down pretty hard so that the glue joint won't be visible once it's dried. I don't know your opinion, but I'm really happy with the lamination. The knife scale is almost finished, we just need to put a few coats of oil. The oil I'm using is called linseed oil. Mine is boiled, but you can use raw linseed oil as well. It really doesn't matter for this project. That linseed oil really made the grain pop out and it now looks really nice. I made this properly to give an idea of how the knife scale will look on an actual knife. If we take a closer look at this, you can see that the lamination turned out really good. There are no thick glue lines and the structure feels nice and solid. Same goes for the bottom, that is perfectly flat to the knife blade. Well, that was pretty much it. In my next project, I'm gonna try to use the same technique that I used on this knife scale on a slingshot. I'm thinking about making a front and back panel in a similar pattern. I think it can look really cool. If you watched till the end of the video, I'd like to say thank you. And if you liked it, consider giving a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. It helps out a lot. See you next time. Bye.